Hello, I'm Alma Angeles and you're watching Eagle News International. Hello, CJ.
Good evening, Alma, and good evening to everyone watching the news. Here are the headlines tonight.
At least 23 people were killed and dozens injured as an elevated metro line collapses in the Mexican capital as a train was passing, according to authorities.
India's COVID-19 caseload surges past 20 million as oxygen shortages cripple the country's health service.
Well, we appreciate
Malacanang appreciates Hong Kong's decision to suspend its policy on compulsory COVID-19 vaccination of foreign domestic workers before their contracts can be renewed.
And Singapore's government has released a catchy music video urging citizens to get vaccinated.
Wait, please, we need help. Okay, let's go!
An elevated metro line collapsed in the Mexican capital on Monday, leaving at least 23 people dead and dozens injured as a train came plunging down, according to authorities. Anxious relatives gathered at the site, awaiting news of those believed to have been aboard the train. Take a look.
La que nos habló fue mi nuera, fue la que venía con él. Ella sí logró salir y ella fue la que nos avisó que se les había caído la ballena encima de ellos.
Venía con su esposa y su esposa sí la lograron sacar, pero él se quedó ahí aplastado. Y la verdad, pues como no sabemos nada, no nos dan informes. Y está aplastado, él está ahí ya. Y ahorita para que lo saquen, pues quién sabe cuánto.
Bueno,
mira, realmente en las mañanas cuando empiezan a activarse los trenes a tener su servicio,
sí,
las casas se sienten.
Estoy aquí todavía con los reporteros.
Entonces, por ese simple hecho, nosotros sabemos de que está mal esta construcción.
Se fue.
As you can see here, carriages are hanging from the overpass in a tangle of twisted cables with the ends pointing towards the ground in a V shape. Dozens of emergency workers were seen trying to rescue victims from the carriages, but the work later had to be paused because of fears the wreckage was too unstable. A car was also trapped under the rubble, but a person inside managed to get out alive, according to a witness. The police who brought rescue dogs urged onlookers to move back in case of falling debris. The Mexico City subway has 12 lines and carries millions of passengers each day. The latest accident comes at a time when Mexico is struggling to cope with the coronavirus pandemic, which has left more than 217,000 people dead in the country, one of the world's highest tolls. Now, they were trying to stabilize the structure using cranes. It's not immediately clear what caused the tragedy. Mexico City's Mayor Claudia Sheinbaum said at the scene that it appeared a girder on the bridge had given way. The railway line is less than 10 years old.
Meanwhile, India's coronavirus caseload topped 20 million on Tuesday as the relentless surge finally forced the suspension of the nation's lucrative cricket competition involving some of the sport's biggest global stars. The glitzy Indian Premier League, the world's richest 2020 cricket tournament, had carried on in empty stadiums, sparking criticism that it was inappropriate under the circumstances. Organizers said they did not want to compromise the safety of staff and players, including some of the world's biggest cricket stars from India, Australia, England, and New Zealand. These are difficult times, especially in India, and while we have tried to bring in some positivity and cheer, it is imperative that the tournament is now suspended, they said in a statement. More than 350,000 new cases were reported in India Tuesday, a drop from the peak of 402,000 last week, giving some cause for optimism that the worst of the devastating wave may have passed. India's healthcare infrastructure has struggled to cope with the huge number of cases, with deep shortages of medicines, hospital beds, and medical oxygen.
And the United Kingdom said it was sending an extra 1,000 oxygen ventilators to COVID-struck India. Arian Celestino has this report.
Hi, here is my update in the United Kingdom. The UK said Sunday it was sending an extra 1,000 oxygen ventilators to COVID-struck India, as a group of doctors staged their own intervention by offering long-distance telemedicine from Britain. British authorities have already sent 495 oxygen concentrators and 200 ventilators to India, as the country grapples with a devastating surge in coronavirus cases and are shipping 3 larger production units dubbed oxygen factories. The 1,000 additional ventilators will come from British surplus capacity for Indian hospitals to help them most severe COVID cases, Downing Street said in a statement. The terrible images we have seen in India in recent weeks are all the more powerful because of the close and enduring connection between the people of the UK and India, Prime Minister Boris Johnson said. The UK will always be there for India in its time of need, he said, although Britain says it has no coronavirus vaccines to spare at this time. The UK's inoculation campaign has rested largely on AstraZeneca jabs made by the Serum Institute of India, the world's largest vaccine producer, and India provided much of Britain's protective equipment and paracetamol last year at the pandemic's height. Foreign Secretary Dominic Raab is set to meet Indian External Affairs Minister Subramaniam Jaishankar on Monday on the margins of G7 talks this week in London. Johnson is then due to hold a virtual meeting with Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi on Tuesday, after cancelling a trip to New Delhi in light of the COVID crisis. Britain is home to a large Indian diaspora which has mobilized with fundraising appeals to help supply oxygen and protective equipment to hospitals in India. Members of the British Association of Physicians of Indian Origin, BAPIO, have meanwhile started to hold remote consultations with patients requiring non-urgent care in India to ease the load of hard-pressed medics there. As well as phone and online consultations, BAPIO doctors are analyzing the results of routine tests conducted in India hospitals, he said. Some 250 volunteers from Britain have signed up to the telemedicine initiative, and the group is aiming to get 1,000 in all, working in partnership with hospitals and smaller clinics. Reporting from the United Kingdom, I am Arian Celestino. We live in interesting times.
In other news, the Myanmar junta has charged a Japanese journalist under a fake news law. Freelance reporter Yuki Kitazumi was arrested last month and charged on Monday, World Press Freedom Day, with spreading fake news, according to a report by Kyodo News Agency. He is one of 50 journalists currently held in Myanmar as part of the junta's crackdown on widespread protests against the February 1 coup. Kyodo cited an unnamed Japanese embassy official saying Kitazumi had no health problems despite spending several weeks in Yangon's insane prison, which has a long and unsavory reputation for holding political prisoners. Kitazumi has been in custody since April 18, the second time he had been arrested since the coup. In February, he was beaten up and briefly held during a crackdown on protesters, but was later released. Japan, for years a top aid donor to Myanmar, has been pressing for his release. Naturally, we will continue to do our utmost for the early release of the Japanese national being held, Foreign Minister Toshimitsu Motegi told Japanese journalists during a trip to Britain, according to national broadcaster NHK. A total of 766 civilians have been killed in the military crackdown on protests, according to the Assistance Association for Political Prisoners, or AAPP, a local monitoring group. As well as arresting journalists, the generals have also sought to clamp down on news of the crisis by shuttering independent media outlets and throttling internet speeds.
Indonesia has detected the coronavirus variants linked to more transmissible variants first detected in India and South Africa ahead of the Eid al-Fitr Mudik or Exodus season, when mobility is expected to rise, prompting concerns of a possible case resurgence as seen in other countries. Now, Indonesia recently also reported a case of B1351 variant first detected in South Africa, and 3 new cases of B117, another concerning variant, first detected in the United Kingdom, making a total of 13 UK variant cases so far. Last month in Indonesia, which has been battling one of Asia's worst COVID outbreaks, stopped issuing visas for foreigners who had been in India in the previous 14 days. Neighboring Malaysia said on Sunday it had detected its first case of the Indian variant days after imposing a ban on flights from the country. Despite the rollout of vaccines in many countries, COVID-19 is still wreaking destruction around the world, with more than 3.2 million lives lost and known infections soaring past 150 million. Asia has recorded the bulk of new cases, driven largely by the surge in India.
In other news, the United States is expected to authorize the Pfizer BioNTech COVID-19 vaccine for children aged 12 and up by early next week, according to a media report on Monday. Pfizer has applied for emergency use authorization for its COVID-19 vaccine for children and teenagers between ages 12 and 15, according to CNN, citing a government official. The FDA will have to amend the emergency use authorization for the vaccine, but the process should be straightforward, CNN reported. The U.S. Food and Drug Administration is expected to grant that approval by early next week. After the FDA decision, the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention Advisory Committee will meet to recommend how the vaccine should be used. A spokeswoman for the FDA declined to give details on the approval timeline, telling the Washington Post, "We are working to review this request as quickly and transparently as possible." The Pfizer vaccine is currently authorized for people 16 and older in the United States.
Staying in the U.S., New York Governor Andrew Cuomo announced a major easing of coronavirus restrictions, including the imminent resumption of a 24-hour operations on the city subway. Take a look.
Right. So today we announced a major reopening of New York State on May 19th. The key is a smart reopening. Reopening is not a light switch. We said this from the beginning. It's not fully close the light switch, fully open the light switch. It's a smart reopening. It's a measured reopening. It's a phased reopening. But we are at a point now where we are going to take a major step forward in reopening. When we did the close down, if you remember, we did it on a regionally coordinated basis. We live in a tri-state area. New York shouldn't be a competitor or an encumbrance to New Jersey or to Connecticut. If we are not coordinated, what you'll do is you'll drive people from New Jersey to come to New York. And what we've agreed on a regionally coordinated basis, beginning Wednesday, May 19th, most capacity restrictions will end across the tri-state area.
The announcement highlights how far the Big Apple, once the epicenter of the U.S. outbreak, has come in getting the virus under control. From May 19, percentage limits on occupancy will be scrapped for many businesses and cultural venues in the city, including shops, restaurants, cinemas, and museums, according to Cuomo. Now, these limits currently vary between 33 and 75% capacity. Businesses will be allowed to welcome as many people as they want, provided 6 feet or social distancing is maintained, as recommended by the Fed Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. Outdoor gathering limits will double from 250 to 500 people, while 250 people will be able to get together indoors, up from 100. Larger gatherings will be allowed if everyone in attendance is either vaccinated or recently tested negative. The announcement paves the way for New York's famous theaters to plan their return. Large-scale indoor event venues will be able to operate at 30% capacity, up from 10% currently, while outdoor sports stadia will operate at 33%. Cuomo said underground train services in the Big Apple will resume around the clock on May 17.
In other news, Australia's Prime Minister fended off accusations of racism and having blood on his hands Tuesday as he retreated from a threat to jail Australians trying to escape COVID-racked India. Scott Morrison's government moved to ban travelers from India from entering Australia until May 15. Threatening rule breakers, including Australian citizens, with prison time. Amid a widespread backlash, Morrison on Tuesday said it was highly unlikely that Australians who skirted a ban would be jailed. Take a look.
Made on health grounds, it's temporary, it's until the 15th of May. We will review that over the course of this week. We'll review it again over the course of next week, as we do with all of our decisions. The biosecurity law enforcements that have been put in place have been there for 14 months. The same rules apply to prevent people from going into remote Indigenous communities. The extremes of those sanctions haven't been applied in those circumstances. It's there to support a policy decision of the government to stop a third wave in Australia. Well, no, I don't agree with him, and I would just again thank all of those who are in this difficult situation for their patience and their understanding. I'm working to bring them home safely. The great risk of not taking the actions the government has taken was that we could see the rate of cases that we're seeing come in only increase further and jeopardise our medium to long-term abilities to bring more Australians home. So this is a decision that is being taken both in the interests of keeping Australians safe now, but also to put us in a stronger position to safely bring more Australians home. So I respectfully disagree with the critics on this one, but the buck stops here when it comes to these decisions, and I'm going to take decisions that I believe are going to protect Australia from a third wave and help me to be able to reach out and bring more Australians safely home from places where they're in difficult situations.
Around 9,000 Australians are believed to be in India, where hundreds of thousands of new coronavirus cases are being detected every day, and the death toll is soaring. Among those trapped are some of Australia's most high-profile sporting stars, cricketers playing in the lucrative Indian Premier League. The ban, which came into effect yesterday, lasts until at least May 15 and carries the threat of criminal sanctions, including 5 years in jail and fines of up to $66,000 for people who try to return. The ban was introduced under the Biosecurity Act. In March last year, the Governor General declared a human biosecurity emergency in response to the emerging pandemic, which gave the health minister and the government the power to make such emergency determinations to try to keep COVID-19 out of Australia.
In other news, Malacanang appreciates Hong Kong's decision to suspend its policy on compulsory COVID-19 vaccination of foreign domestic workers before their contracts can be renewed. Hong Kong leader Carrie Lam Chang Yuet Ngoor has decided to put on hold the plan to require vaccination of domestic helpers following accusations of discrimination. Lam, however, said the government is still pushing through with its mandatory COVID testing for all domestic helpers by May 9. Take a look.
Well, we appreciate po the gesture of Madam Lam. And of course, we welcome also the mandatory testing. No? In fact, we are also ramping up our own testing here in the Philippines because talaga naman pong pag hindi mo tinest, hindi mo alam kung nasaan ang ating kalaban.
On Monday, Secretary Roque echoed the remarks made by Foreign Affairs Secretary Teodoro Locsin Jr. and Philippine Consul General to Hong Kong, Rally Tejada, urging Hong Kong not to single out overseas Filipino workers in its push for mandatory COVID vaccination of foreign domestic helpers. Locsin said Hong Kong's COVID-19 vaccination requirement smacks of discrimination, and if it is a special favor, it is unfair to other nationalities. Tejada said the policy must not only include foreign domestic workers, but other non-resident workers who are similarly situated so that there is no feeling of being singled out. While he acknowledged Hong Kong's sovereign prerogative to implement compulsory COVID-19 vaccination, Secretary Roque noted that it must be done in a manner that all people will be covered.
The rollout of Sputnik V vaccines began in the city of Manila on Tuesday, starting with the healthcare workers. The Russian jabs were delivered on Monday to the Santa Ana Hospital where the vaccination took place. Manila Vice Mayor Hani Lacuna Pangan, also a medical doctor, said medical frontliners remained the priority in accordance with the Department of Health and the Interagency Task Force guidelines. When done with the frontliners, the jabs will be given to the 42 or A2 or senior citizens and A3, those with comorbidities groups. As of noon, 59 medical frontliners have received the Sputnik V jabs. The frontliners either did not want the Sinovac and AstraZeneca vaccines previously offered or contracted COVID-19 and had to first recover. The rollout was witnessed by City Administrator Felix Espiritu, DOH Secretary Francisco Duque III, DOH National Capital Region Director Dr. Gloria Balboa, and DOH Assistant Secretary Elmer Punzalan.
And the news continues here on Eagle News. CJ and I will be back right after this break.
This portion is brought to you by Canriv Corporation, your ventilation and air conditioning specialist. Services offered: supply and installation of elevators, escalators, air conditioners, ventilators, jet towel, hand dryers, generators, access control system, factory automation, and modernization. For more info, please contact Ami Kanke at 0915-263-7198 or 0998-900-3224.
Mula noon hanggang ngayon, gabay natin ang MTRCB ratings sa matalino at responsableng panonood. Sa tamang pagsunod sa MTRCB ratings, ginagawa nating ligtas at makabuluhan ang panonood ng bawat miyembro ng pamilyang Pilipino. Lumipas man ang panahon, hanggang may pamilyang Pilipino, andyan ang MTRCB.
Welcome back. At least 17 people died and more than 800 were wounded in clashes that broke out in Colombia during 5 days of protests against a proposed government tax reform, according to authorities. The Ombudsman's office said 16 civilians and 1 police officer died in violence during the protests that began throughout the country on April 28, while 846 people, including 306 civilians, were injured. Authorities have detained 431 people while the government deployed the military in the worst affected cities. Some NGOs accused the police of firing at civilians. Faced with the unrest, the government of President Ivan Duque ordered the proposal be withdrawn from Congress, where it was being debated. Despite that, dozens of people were still out on Monday in the capital Bogota, protesting and blocking roads. The tax reform had been heavily criticized for punishing the middle classes at a time of economic crisis brought on by the coronavirus pandemic. The government introduced the bill on April 15 as a means of financing public spending. The aim was to generate $6.3 billion between 2022 and 2031 to reignite the fourth largest economy in Latin America. Hit by coronavirus restrictions, Colombia's economy shrank by 6.8% in 2020, its worst performance in half a century. While 42.5% of the 50 million population now live in poverty.
Now, President Joe Biden announced Monday, after coming under fierce criticism, that he was raising the maximum number of refugees allowed into the United States this year to 62,500, up from the 15,000 cap imposed by his predecessor, Donald Trump. The change follows backlash from allies over Biden's earlier decision to keep the Trump-era limits, a politically costly moment of confusion that stood out in a White House notable for its iron discipline in its first 3 months. This erases the historically low number set by the previous administration of 15,000, which did not reflect America's values as a nation that welcomes and supports refugees, Biden said in a statement. The new admissions cap will also reinforce efforts that are already underway to expand the United States' capacity to admit refugees so that we can reach the goal of 125,000 refugee admissions that I intend to set for the coming fiscal year. That is according to President Biden. The program is only for refugees selected by U.S. Secretary and intelligence agencies from United Nations camps around the world. In another shift from Trump's policies, Biden announced in April that quotas were being expanded for refugees from Central America, the Middle East, and Africa, while also opening the doors to 3 mostly Muslim countries, Somalia, Syria, and Yemen. With Monday's announcement, the White House will hope to have calmed the political waters among Democrats just when it needs party unity to push forward on huge proposed social and infrastructure spending plans in an almost evenly divided Congress.
In other news, an overcrowded smuggling boat capsized on Sunday off the California coast after crashing into the shoreline, killing 3 people and leaving 27 people hospitalized with a range of injuries, according to authorities. The accident happened on Sunday morning off San Diego, with all aboard the 40-foot vessel jumping into the choppy waters as it slowly disintegrated, according to witness video. It was a smuggling vessel, according to Jeffrey Stevenson of the Customs and Border Protection Public Affairs Office. He told this to reporters, "Border Patrol agents are with a man we believe was the operator," he said. He also said that smugglers don't care about the people they're exploiting. Stevenson said those aboard were likely migrants trying to illegally enter the U.S. The 27 survivors were taken to hospitals with varying degrees of injuries, according to Jose Isea, a spokesman for the San Diego Fire Rescue Department. The accident took place as the U.S. grapples with huge waves of undocumented migrants arriving at its southern border. Officials and migrants say the influx was sparked by increased poverty and violence in Central America, as well as President Joe Biden's promise of a more humane policy toward immigrants. U.S. Customs and Border Protection said Friday it was stepping up patrols off the San Diego coast over the weekend to disrupt migrant smuggling runs.
The G7 foreign ministers gathered in London on Tuesday with human rights and protecting democracy high on the agenda. British Foreign Secretary Dominic Raab addressed the issue of the political crisis in Myanmar. Take a look.
We've been engaged with the partners of the region. I've been discussing that with ASEAN foreign ministers recently, and we've obviously got the opportunity with the G7 guests here from Korea, from India, from Australia, but also the foreign minister from Brunei, chair of the of ASEAN at the moment, to discuss how we shift the dial and get a change for the better in Myanmar. And so we'll keep up all of those efforts on the sanctions side, but also on the diplomacy front.
The three-day talks in London will set the stage for a leaders' summit next month in southwest England on what will be President Biden's first foreign trip. South Korea, as well as India, Australia, South Africa, and ASEAN bloc-chaired Brunei were invited by Britain as guests for meetings of the Club of Seven Wealthy Democracies. G7 foreign ministers gathered in London on Tuesday with human rights again and protecting democracy high on the agenda. Blinken also raised the growing turbulence in Myanmar, both with Japan and Brunei. Japan has comparatively open channels to the military, which seized power on February 1, while ASEAN leaders late last month invited the junta chief to a summit and urged an end to the violence. Blinken praised the initiative from the 10-nation Southeast Asian bloc, including its call for a special envoy who the top U.S. diplomat said should be able to deal with all sides in Myanmar.
Meanwhile, the WHO pleaded with the G7 to dig deep and fund the global COVID-19 recovery, warning the crisis cannot be resolved worldwide if they don't step up. The World Health Organization said the group of 7 industrial powers had the ability to fund the vaccines, tests, and treatments needed to conquer the pandemic and knock down the barriers blocking faster production. Take a look.
Next month, leaders from the G7 countries will gather for what may be the most significant meeting in its history. The G7 countries are the world's economic and political leaders. They're also home to many of the world's vaccine producers. We will only solve the vaccine crisis with the leadership of these countries. The Access to COVID-19 Tools Accelerator currently faces a funding gap of $19 billion. And we estimate that we will need a further $35 to $45 billion next year to vaccinate most adults around the world. The G7 countries could mobilize a substantial portion of these funds themselves and lead a global effort to accelerate vaccination around the world. More cases of COVID-19 have been reported globally in the past 2 weeks than during the first 6 months of the pandemic. India and Brazil account for more than half of last week's cases, but there are many other countries all over the world that face a very fragile situation.
An armed person was shot by FBI agents Monday after a standoff of several hours at the entry gate to the CIA headquarters, the Federal Investigation Agency said. The unidentified person was prevented from driving past the initial gate into the CIA's sprawling wooded compound just outside Washington early Monday afternoon. Security personnel reportedly tried to negotiate with the person to surrender for several hours. The FBI said in a statement that the individual emerged from his vehicle with a weapon and was engaged by law enforcement officers. Earlier, a CIA spokesperson said they were aware of the situation outside the compound's secure perimeter, several hundred meters from the agency's main building. Our compound remains secured, and our security protective officers working the incident are the only agency personnel directly involved, they said. Security has grown in recent years at the CIA, which sits in Langley, Virginia, just off a busy road. In 1993, a Pakistani man, Mir Aimal Kansi, shot 2 agency employees dead and wounded 3 others as they sat in their cars waiting at a stoplight to enter the compound.
Chinese Navy ships have arrived off Bali to help haul up a submarine that sank last month, killing 53 crew. The Indonesian Navy said Tuesday as it geared up for a deep-sea salvage operation. The help arrived after other foreign ships from Australia, Singapore, and Malaysia left the archipelago, having assisted Indonesian authorities in finding the stricken vessel. The Korean Nanggala 482, one of 5 submarines in Indonesia's fleet, disappeared last month while it was scheduled to take part in live torpedo training exercises. An underwater rescue vehicle supplied by neighboring Singapore gave visual information or confirmation that the German-built sub was lying on the seafloor more than 800 feet or 800 meters deep, broken in 3 parts, confirming there was no hope of finding survivors. 2 Chinese salvage ships were on standby in waters off Bali, while a third was expected to arrive later Tuesday, the Indonesian Navy said, adding that Chinese Navy officials in Bali were helping to examine data collected on the submarine. All 3 salvage ships can dive up to 4,500 meters deep. The military has yet to offer an official explanation for the sinking of the decades-old submarine, which was delivered to the Southeast Asian nation back in 1981.
Eagle News will be back with more updates. Please don't go away.
Innovation, digital disruption, globalization. Startups, micro, small, and medium enterprises, as well as large corporations, all face interesting challenges in the market today. Peek into the world of exciting opportunities and partnerships to drive growth with the latest business news and information. We are open for business. Your weekly dose of entrepreneurial inspiration to update you on the latest developments in the world of business. Get up close and personal with CEOs and thought leaders to help you discover valuable insights. Sharpen your instincts for smart decision-making with the latest markets and economic trends, disruptive ideas, global innovation, social entrepreneurship, and other leading-edge business ideas. Join the conversations to create a more vibrant environment for entrepreneurship. Catch Open for Business, from vision to action.
Welcome back to the news. Pfizer sharply increased its projections for 2021 revenues and profits on Tuesday, citing much higher sales from its COVID-19 vaccine sales. The drug maker now estimates 2021 revenues of $26 billion from the vaccine, up from $15 billion previously, and reflecting 1.6 billion doses expected to be delivered this year under contracts signed through mid-April. Pfizer now sees profits of between $3.55 and $3.65 per share for the year, up 45 cents from the previous range. As with other COVID-19 inoculations, Pfizer developed its vaccine at an exceptionally fast pace and is currently studying additional populations who could receive it. This includes research into providing the shots to healthy children 6 months to 11 years old. Pfizer is also researching booster shots for the vaccine that could come 6 months or later after the prior shot. Net income rose 45% to $4.9 billion.
Meanwhile, the head of Lufthansa is asking shareholders at its annual general meeting to give the go-ahead for a capital increase of up to 5.5 billion euros in order to repay the public aid that enabled Europe's leading airline group to avoid bankruptcy at the height of the COVID-19 crisis. Take a look.
Bitten Sie daher heute um Ihre Zustimmung zu einem genehmigten Kapital C. Der Beschluss sollte uns in die Lage versetzen, flexibel eine Kapitalerhöhung durchzuführen, damit wir unsere Bilanzkennzahlen wieder stärken und zu alter finanzieller Stabilität zurückkehren können. Klar ist, dass wir einen Großteil der Erlöse für die Rückführung der staatlichen Stabilisierungsmaßnahmen nutzen werden. Denn, das haben wir immer wieder betont, wenn wir die Wahl haben, finanzieren wir uns lieber am Kapitalmarkt als beim Steuerzahler.
Lufthansa on Thursday lowered its expectations for a travel rebound in 2021 despite optimism about vaccines as the coronavirus pandemic pushed the German airline giant into another quarterly loss. The group reported a 1 billion euro net loss over the January to March period, slightly beating analysts' expectations. Lufthansa, which also includes Austrian, Swiss, and Brussels Airlines, was saved from bankruptcy last June by a German government bailout. The company is in the throes of a painful restructuring to slash costs that will include thousands of job cuts. By the end of the first quarter of 2021, Lufthansa had around 110,000 employees globally, 19% fewer than a year ago. As part of the recovery plan, the group's current fleet of 800 aircraft will be slashed to 650 by 2023.
In other news, Ford Motor Company and BMW Group have put their money on battery technology company Solid Power. The two companies said are leading a $130 million funding round in a solid-state battery startup, Solid Power, as car makers push to lower the cost of electric vehicles by investing in the development of affordable but powerful rechargeable batteries. According to a Reuters report, the Series B investment round, which includes venture capital firm Volta Energy Technologies, allows Solid Power to expand in-house manufacturing capabilities and positions the battery maker to eventually supply future EVs, possibly by the end of the decade, according to BMW battery cell technology chief Peter Lamb. Solid Power declined to say at what level the funding round values the company.
In other business news, energy giant Saudi Aramco posted a 30% jump in first quarter profits, beating forecasts in a sign of recovery from last year's oil market crash, fueled by the pandemic. Aramco said its net profit rose to $21.7 billion in the first 3 months of the year compared to $16.7 billion in the same quarter of 2020, owing to a stronger oil market and higher refining and chemical margins. The bumper results follow strong profits posted last month by major oil firms, from American giants ExxonMobil and Chevron to Britain's BP and France's Total, as their recovery in crude prices fueled their rebound from the pandemic. Oil prices stumbled midway through last year's first quarter as the pandemic shuttered large parts of the global economy, piling pressure on petro-states, including OPEC kingpin Saudi Arabia. The strong earnings provide relief to Aramco, Saudi Arabia's cash cow, which has revealed consecutive falls in profits since it began began disclosing earnings in 2019.
The Tyson Foods Incorporated of Springdale is introducing burger patties and ground bratwurst and Italian sausage options from its raised-rooted brand of plant-based protein in product line. The company said the products will be available at grocery stores nationwide. According to a report from the Arkansas business, Tyson Foods conducted a recent survey by Engine Insights and showed that about half of Americans would like plant-based products suitable for grilling. The company said the products are made from pea protein and have between 17 and 21 grams of protein per serving, with less saturated fat than meat-based proteins.
Egypt's military has confirmed it ordered 30 Rafale jets from French defense firm Dassault Aviation to shore up national security. The order, which follows the 2015 purchase of 24 Rafale jets, will be financed through a 10-year loan, according to the military in a statement late on Monday. Investigative site Disclose had reported earlier Monday that the order was part of a secret mega defense deal worth almost 4 billion euros or $4.8 billion. Egypt is the world's third biggest arms importer after Saudi Arabia and India, according to the Stockholm International Peace Research Institute. Its arms purchases grew by 136% over the last decade, and it has diversified its sourcing beyond the U.S., buying military equipment from France, Germany, and Russia, according to the Institute in a report released earlier this year. Cairo has positioned itself as a bulwark of stability in the region as the conflict in its western neighbor Libya grinds on. President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi and French counterpart Emmanuel Macron enjoy a close relationship built on mutual security interests.
Uber has teamed up with UK technology startup Arrival to create an electric car for the app-based US ride-hailing firm that will help to cut emissions, the pair said Tuesday. The vehicle is expected to enter production in the third quarter of 2023, and the two companies will explore a strategic relationship in key markets, including the UK and EU, according to a statement. It comes after 6-year-old Arrival, which is also creating electric vans and buses listed on Wall Street's Nasdaq in March. Uber has committed to becoming a fully electric mobility platform in London by 2025 and by 2030 across North America and Europe, according to the statement. Jamie Haywood, Uber's original general manager for Northern and Eastern Europe, said, "As our cities open up, we have an opportunity to make sure that urban transport is cleaner than ever before."
Singapore's government has released a catchy music video urging citizens to get vaccinated. The video features a popular 90s sitcom character sporting his signature afro facial mole and rubber boots, rapping about the benefits of vaccination in Slinglish, patois that mixes English with words from several local tongues. Take a look.
Good job, Chukang. Hey, thank you, Doctor. I go first, huh? Wait, please, we need your help. Okay, let's go. Some say lay, some say la. Guess who's back? It's Uncle Bob. And me, Rosie. Everybody, it's time to vaccinate. Faster, Lola. No time to waste. But you are easy, confirm say. Aya, Rosie, come on, be brave. The vaccine is not anyhow wet. And against COVID, it will protect. Singapore, don't wait and see. When I get your shot, steady from BP. Faster go and vaccinate. Don't delay your wait. But chronic illness still can take. I'm not sure, I'm quite afraid. Chronic illnesses, mild allergies, all these can take. There you see. If not sure, relax, don't panic. Ask your doctor at the clinic. It's safe for most, including elderly, cause the government got checked properly. Singapore, don't wait and see. When I get your shot,
numbers now so low. Why take now? Just take it slow.
Low cases isn't no cases. Don't sabo and throw our faces. The vaccine don't just protect us, it lessens the spread. Now that's the plus. We don't catch it means we don't spread it like that. That can keep people safe. And in Singapore, don't wait and see. Then they get your shot. Steady from BB. Faster go and vaccinate. Don't think that you're winning my mind. Singapore, don't wait and see. Then they get your shot. Steady from BB. Faster go and vaccinate.
That's definitely going to be in my head for a very long time. Well, in other news, Blue Angels conduct a Wings over South Texas air show during annual Corpus Christi Buccaneer Days Festival. We have Jane Kathleen Gregorio of our EBC Texas Bureau with that story. Jane.
Thank you, and howdy from the Lone Star State. We're here today in Corpus Christi, where crowds have gathered for the much-anticipated annual festival, Buccaneer Days, also known as Buck Days. Since 1938, the Buccaneer Days Festival has been annually staged by the Buccaneer Commission, a nonprofit organization. The event supports bringing entertainment, education, and cultural events to the coastal bend. Proceeds from Buck Days are awarded to students as college scholarships. The festival is held on the Corpus Christi Bayfront in the spring and has something for everyone: a rodeo, a carnival, and 2 parades. For the first time in history, the U.S. Navy Blue Angels Air Show Wings over Texas is being held in conjunction with Buck Days. The Corpus Christi Bayfront was lined with thousands of people and cars as families enjoyed the sunny weather while keeping an eye on the sky.
It's one of those big aircraft. We're from Chicago. We've been here about 3 years now, but the first couple Buck Days we weren't able to attend, obviously, last year.
And who did you bring with you today?
My parents, my aunt, and my kids' friends.
And so, how does it feel being back out here after all of the lockdowns, the quarantines, the stay at home?
It feels great. I mean, we're still kind of, away from everybody a little bit, but it's nice to be out in the public and be able to do this with our friends and our family again. So we're here visiting the air show, just, looking for some fun, exciting things to see and things to do and get the kids out and get to experience everything that they've never been to an air show before, so this is their first one.
I am Aubrey and I am 8 years old, and it is so much fun to watch the airplanes, and they're so cool to watch, but they are really loud. It's just really exciting and cool and happy to see these airplanes.
Yeah, my name is Anwar Badri, and I'm resident here in Corpus Christi, Texas. I'm here today to go visit Buck Days. That's an event happening every year. And today is the air show, so I'm so excited about that. They're gonna start soon.
It's a really good experience.
The Buck Days Festival will run through May 9th. In Corpus Christi, Texas, I'm Jane Kathleen Gregorio, Eagle News. We live in interesting times.
Thank you so much, Jane Kathleen. Yeah, it is.
Looks so exciting and scary.
Yes, but I'm just gonna go back to that Singapore rap video. It's interesting that different governments and LGUs, even here in the Philippines, are employing different strategies to get people to vaccinate. Some LGUs here in the Philippines are even giving out rice sacks or even relief goods or grocery items for those who want to get vaccinated.
Yeah.
The sooner
and
that
they're
we all
getting
get
creative
vaccinated.
as well to entice you to get vaccinated. Yeah.
I wish we have something like that though. A rap video. Let's see.
We'll make one.
Okay. We have a lot of Net 25 artists for that. Well, that's it for tonight's broadcast. Thank you so much for joining us. I am CJ Hero. Please join the broadcast tomorrow.
And at the end of the day, there remains so much more to be grateful for. We'll see you back tomorrow. I'm Alma Angeles, and
we live in interesting times.